For 43 years, I dedicated my entire life to my daughter Olivia. Every promotion I chased, every overtime shift I worked, every penny I saved went toward giving her the future she deserved. I sacrificed my own dreams, my social life, even my health, all to make sure she would never experience the hardships I had faced. All I wanted was to see her succeed, to see her build the life I never could. But when I needed a place to stay during Christmas after losing my home, her true feelings emerged like frost creeping across a window, slowly revealing a pattern I'd been blind to for decades. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. "I'm sorry, Mom, but we simply don't have the space," she told me, standing in the doorway of her 5-bedroom house, blocking my entrance as snow collected on my shoulders. "Besides, Harrison's parents are coming, and you know how they feel." About people like you. People like me. Those words pierced deeper than the December chill. After everything I'd sacrificed, after pouring my life's energy into her success, I was nothing more than an embarrassment to be hidden away during the holidays. What Olivia didn't know, what she couldn't possibly have imagined as she closed her door on me that snowy evening, was that 2 weeks earlier, I had become the majority shareholder in Luminous Tech, the very company where she'd just been promoted to vice president of marketing. The company whose stock options formed the foundation of her family's wealth and status. Before we continue with my story, take a moment to tell us where you're watching from in the comments. And if my journey resonates with you, please hit that subscribe button. It truly means the world to us. Tomorrow, we're sharing an even more powerful story that you won't want to miss, so make sure you're subscribed with notifications on. I never planned to be a single mother working 3 jobs. When I first took the position as a night janitor at Belmont University while attending morning classes, it was supposed to be temporary, just something to keep us afloat after Olivia's father walked out, leaving me alone with our 2-year-old daughter and a mountain of debt. But temporary solutions have a way of becoming permanent when you're focused on someone else's future instead of your own. On top of my janitorial work, I waitressed weekends at Harborview Diner and did bookkeeping for local businesses from our tiny apartment after Olivia went to sleep. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. 4 hours a night was my standard, sometimes less during exam periods or when Olivia got sick. But I never complained. Every exhausted moment felt worthwhile when I saw her thriving, excelling in the private school I could barely afford, winning science competitions, eventually earning a full scholarship to Princeton. Mrs. Wilson, one of the professors whose office I cleaned, would often find me studying at 3 a.m. during my breaks. "Catherine, you're working yourself into an early grave," she'd warn, her eyes filled with concern behind wire-rimmed glasses. "This pace isn't sustainable." I'd smile and wave her off, but those words carried more truth than I was ready to accept. The constant work had taken its toll. Chronic back pain from years of scrubbing floors, premature gray hair that I couldn't afford to color, hands roughened and cracked from industrial cleaning chemicals. My body was aging faster than my years, but my focus remained singular: Olivia's future. When she graduated with honors and landed her first job at a marketing firm in Boston, I thought my heart might burst with pride. I'd done it. Despite every obstacle, I'd given her the foundation she needed to succeed. She married Harrison Peters, the son of a banking executive, and they bought their dream home in Thornfield Estates, just outside the city. "Mom," Olivia told me during one of her increasingly rare visits, her manicured hands gesturing excitedly, "we have a beautiful guest suite in the East Wing. When you're ready to retire, you can move in with us. Help with the children when they come along." I'd cried that night, touched by what I thought was thoughtfulness and gratitude. How wrong I'd been. Then came the accident. A patch of black ice, On my drive home from the night shift, a guardrail that failed, a steep embankment. I woke up in the hospital with a shattered hip, 3 broken ribs, and the devastating news that recovery would take months. My apartment building had been sold to developers, and all tenants had received eviction notices while I was unconscious. With medical bills mounting and no income, I had nowhere to go. It was December 18th when I called Olivia, my voice small and unfamiliar even to my own ears. "Sweetheart, I need to ask a favor, just until I'm back on my feet." The silence on the line stretched for several seconds. "Mom, it's not a good time. We have the company holiday gala, Harrison's parents are visiting for Christmas, and we're hosting the neighborhood New Year's party." "I understand it's inconvenient," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "But I have nowhere else to go. The hospital is discharging me tomorrow." "Can't you stay with one of your friends?" she asked, her voice taking on that slightly irritated tone she'd developed in recent years, the one that made me feel like an imposition rather than a mother. "I've spent the last 40 years working, Olivia. There wasn't time for making friends." "What?" I didn't tell her was that just before the accident, my life had changed dramatically. Richard Donovan, the elderly businessman whose offices I'd cleaned for 15 years, had passed away. To everyone's shock, his will revealed that he'd been quietly building an investment portfolio in my name. A thank you for years of discretion and integrity, for the countless times I'd found confidential documents left out and secured them, for the investment advice I'd hesitantly offered after earning my finance degree through night classes. "Catherine has more financial acumen than most of my so-called advisors," his letter had stated. It's time her intelligence and dedication were properly rewarded. The portfolio was worth $18.6 million, including a controlling interest in Luminous Tech, the rapidly growing technology firm where Olivia had built her career, never knowing that the nameless janitors who emptied her trash each night included her own mother. I had been too ashamed to tell her that despite my degree, I couldn't find work in finance due to my age and lack of professional experience. The cleaning work had been my only option. As I sat in that hospital room, staring at my phone after Olivia's reluctant agreement to let me stay, just until the holidays are over, I made a decision. For the first time in 43 years, I would stop giving. It was time to finally start living for myself. What I couldn't have known then was how quickly everything would unravel when I arrived at Olivia's doorstep on that snowy evening, only to find myself treated as an unwanted obligation rather than family. Or how dramatically our roles would reverse when the truth about Richard Donovan's legacy came to light. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I stood there on my daughter's doorstep, leaning heavily on my cane, as snowflakes settled on my threadbare coat. The rejection in Olivia's eyes stung worse than the biting December wind. After a moment's hesitation, she stepped aside with a sigh. "Fine. Just until January 2nd. We'll set you up in the basement guest room. It's the furthest from the main areas of the house, so you won't disturb Harrison's parents." The basement. Not the beautiful guest suite in the East Wing she'd once promised would be mine. I swallowed my pride and nodded, grateful at least for shelter. The doctor had warned against stairs with my healing hip, but I didn't mention this. Instead, I followed her through the immaculate marble foyer, hobbling behind her efficient stride as she led me to a narrow staircase tucked behind the kitchen. "Dinner's at 7, she said, not offering to help with my small suitcase. Harrison's parents prefer formal attire at the table. The basement room was cold, with a small window near the ceiling that revealed a street-level view of snow-covered bushes. A pull-out sofa, not a proper bed, dominated the space. Boxes of Christmas decorations and exercise equipment lined the walls. This was not a guest suite. This was storage with a sleeping option. What Olivia didn't understand was that I'd spent my entire adult life in spaces far worse than this. Tiny apartments with faulty heaters, basement studios with mold creeping across the walls, shared rooms, with rotating roommates to save on rent. All so she could have her private bedroom in a safe neighborhood, her piano lessons, her SAT tutors. I carefully lowered myself onto the sofa bed, the springs protesting beneath me, and took out my phone. 3 missed calls from Julian Hayes, Richard Donovan's attorney. I'd been avoiding him since leaving the hospital, overwhelmed by the sudden change in my circumstances. The inheritance still didn't feel real. "Ms. Roberts," he greeted me when I returned his call. "I'm glad to hear you're recovering. There are several matters requiring your attention as the new controlling shareholder of Luminous Tech." "I'm still trying to process everything," I admitted. "Richard never mentioned any of this to me. He was a private man, but he observed you for years, noted your comments on business matters, saw how you quietly contributed suggestions through the notes you left on his economic journals. He believed in your instincts." I closed my eyes, remembering the small sticky notes I'd sometimes attach to articles in the business magazines Richard read. Just observations, questions, sometimes corrections to flawed logic I'd noticed. I never thought he actually read them. "There's an emergency board meeting tomorrow," Julian continued. "The CEO is pushing through some controversial layoffs before year-end, an entire division of workers to be terminated 2 days before Christmas, including the entire maintenance and facilities staff." My breath caught. Those were my people, the invisible workforce that kept companies running smoothly, the ones executives like my daughter never truly saw. "Can I stop it? With your controlling interest?" "Absolutely. But you'd need to attend. In person." I thought of my daughter upstairs, of the dismissive way she'd introduced me to her husband when he briefly appeared in the kitchen. "Harrison, my mother will be staying in the basement until January. Not, 'This is Catherine,' or 'Mom's here for the holidays.' Just an inconvenience with an expiration date. I'll be there," I told Julian. "Excellent. One more thing. The company holiday gala is tomorrow evening. As majority shareholder, your presence would be appropriate. The holiday gala." The very event Olivia had mentioned as a reason I was inconvenient. I remembered her words from years earlier. "Mom, Luminous Tech's holiday parties are legendary. The CEO rents out the grand ballroom at the Windsor Hotel. Everyone who matters in the industry attends." Everyone who matters, not people like me. "I don't have anything suitable to wear," I said, glancing at my simple clothes. "Richard anticipated this," Julian replied. "He left a private account for your transition. I've taken the liberty of scheduling an appointment with a personal stylist at Bergman's tomorrow morning. A car will pick you up at 9. When I ended the call, I sat in silence, contemplating the surreal turn my life had taken. For decades, I'd scrubbed floors while studying balance sheets. I'd emptied trash bins while analyzing market trends. I'd cleaned executive bathrooms while listening to business podcasts through a single earbud. Now, I would sit in the boardroom rather than vacuum it after hours. My thoughts were interrupted by Olivia's voice calling down the stairs. "Mom, come up for dinner, and please change into something more appropriate." Appropriate. I looked down at my clean but well-worn slacks and cardigan, my best outfit, saved for special occasions. With effort, I changed into the one dress I'd packed, a simple navy blue sheath I'd found at a thrift store for job interviews that never led anywhere. The dining room was a showcase of opulence: crystal chandelier, hand-painted china, sterling, silver flatware arranged with mathematical precision. Harrison's parents, Eleanor and Walter Peters, were already seated, cocktails in hand. They barely acknowledged my presence. "Catherine," Eleanor said, her gaze skating over my dress with a barely concealed grimace. "Olivia mentioned you'd had some financial difficulties." My daughter flushed, avoiding my eyes as she arranged a napkin in her lap. "Mom's between apartments right now, just until after New Year's." Harrison cleared his throat. "Catherine, Olivia mentioned you work in Maintenance? The way he said it, like he was discussing an unpleasant medical condition, made my spine stiffen. Before I could answer, Olivia jumped in. Mom's been a janitor for years, at several places around the city. Her tone was casual but carried an undercurrent of embarrassment. Walter raised an eyebrow. Janitorial work. At your age. How persistent of you. The condescension in his voice was unmistakable. These people saw me as nothing more than a failure, a burden, an embarrassment to their successful daughter. They had no idea that I'd earned a finance degree summa cum laude while mopping their son's office building, or that I'd spent decades developing the business acumen that had impressed Richard Donovan enough to leave me his fortune. Actually, I said quietly, I recently came into an opportunity that may change my circumstances. Olivia's fork paused halfway to her mouth. What opportunity? I hesitated. Part of me wanted to reveal everything right then, to see their expressions. When they learned that the woman they were treating like an unwanted houseguest now controlled the company that provided their luxurious lifestyle. But something held me back. Perhaps I wanted to see how much further they would go in dismissing me when they thought I had nothing to offer. I'll know more tomorrow, I said instead. I have some meetings. Eleanor laughed lightly. Job interviews for janitorial positions. Require meetings now? How formal? Dinner continued with conversation flowing around me rather than including me. They discussed the holiday gala, the gowns Olivia had considered, the important clients Harrison hoped to impress, the speech the CEO was rumored to be giving about the company's streamlined direction for the new year. They had no idea that the streamlined direction involved firing dedicated workers right before Christmas, or that the cleaning staff they barely noticed would be spending the holidays in unemployment lines instead of with their families. They also had no idea that I now had the power to change all of that. As I carefully made my way back down to the basement that night, I heard Eleanor's voice drift from the living room. Really, Olivia? Couldn't you have found somewhere else for her to stay? What if someone from the company sees her tomorrow? My daughter's response cut deeper than any physical pain from my accident. Don't worry. No one who matters will ever notice someone like my mother. Tomorrow would prove just how wrong she was. Morning light filtered through the small basement window, waking me from a restless sleep. My hip throbbed as I carefully maneuvered myself upright on the pull-out sofa. The digital clock on my phone showed 7:15 a.m. I'd overslept by my standards. For decades, 5 a.m. had been my wake-up call, allowing me to complete my morning cleaning, shift before most office workers even arrived. The house above me was already bustling with activity. I could hear footsteps, the clinking of coffee cups, and Olivia's voice speaking in what I recognized as her professional tone. Likely a work call scheduled early to prepare for today's board meeting. A meeting she had no idea I would be attending. Used the small basement bathroom to freshen up. The facility's basic but functional. My hip made showering difficult, but I managed, years of working through pain serving me well now. As I dressed in my clean slacks and blouse, ignoring Olivia's instruction about appropriate attire, I heard a knock at the basement door. "Grandma, are you awake?" A small voice called out. My heart lifted for the first time since arriving. "Come in, Emma." My 8-year-old granddaughter poked her head in, her copper hair, so like mine in my youth, framing a face brightened with genuine delight. Unlike her parents, Emma had never seemed embarrassed by my occupation or appearance. "Said you hurt yourself," she said, carefully navigating the stairs with a tray balanced in her small hands. "I made you breakfast." The tray held slightly burnt toast, a banana, and a glass of orange juice. Such a simple gesture, yet more consideration than her mother had shown since my arrival. "That's very kind of you, sweetheart." I patted the edge of the bed, and she hopped up beside me. "Why are you in the basement?" Emma asked, her brow furrowing. "Mom always puts grandparents in the blue room upstairs when Grandma and Grandpa Peters visit," out of the mouths of babes. The basement is fine, Emma. I'm just grateful for a place to stay while my hip heals. Emma's eyes widened. Is that why you have a cane? Does it hurt a lot? Only when I laugh, I winked, not wanting to burden her with adult concerns. You should come to my school play tonight, she said suddenly. I'm playing the Winter Fairy. Mom and Dad can't come because they have their big work party, but Grandma and Grandpa Peters are taking me. My heart sank. Olivia hadn't mentioned Emma's play, another example of how peripheral I'd become in their lives. Yet here was another difficult choice. Attend the board meeting and gala that could change my future, or support my granddaughter when her parents wouldn't. I have some important meetings today too, Emma, but I promise we'll have special time together soon. The words felt hollow even as I spoke them, reminiscent of the promises busy parents make, never quite fulfilled. A voice called from upstairs, Emma, come finish getting ready for school. My granddaughter sighed dramatically. That's Mom. She's extra busy today because of the big announcement at work. She lowered her voice to a whisper. Dad says people are getting fired before Christmas. But Mom says it's just operational streamlining, whatever that means. I masked my surprise at Emma's awareness of the situation. Adults sometimes use complicated words for simple things, I said carefully. Emma nodded sagely. Like when they say we're reassessing our priorities, when they really mean they forgot about my school play. From the mouths of babes, indeed. After Emma left, I checked my phone again. A text from Julian confirmed my 9 a.m. appointment at Bergman's, with a car arriving at 8:30. I had just enough time to finish the breakfast Emma had thoughtfully prepared. Upstairs, I could hear Olivia rehearsing what sounded like talking points. The facilities consolidation represents a necessary evolution in our corporate structure. Her voice carried the practiced confidence of someone who had perfected the art of making painful cuts sound like exciting opportunities. At precisely 8:30, my phone buzzed with a text from the driver. Rather than going upstairs to say goodbye and risk another uncomfortable encounter with Olivia or her in-laws, I quietly made my way out through the basement's exterior door, a convenience that now seemed designed more for hiding my comings and goings than for my benefit. The car waiting at the curb was not the taxi I'd expected, but a sleek black town car with tinted windows. The driver, professionally attired complete with cap, opened the door for me. Ms. Roberts, he nodded respectfully, helping me navigate the icy sidewalk. Mr. Hayes asked me to ensure your comfort today. The luxury of being driven, of being treated, with deference rather than dismissal, felt foreign after so many years of public transportation and practical concerns. As we pulled away from Olivia's house, I caught a glimpse of her in the front window, phone pressed to her ear, completely unaware of my departure in a vehicle that probably cost more than I'd earned in a year of cleaning. Bergman's department. Store occupied a historical building downtown, its stone facade adorned with tasteful holiday decorations. The driver escorted me inside, where we were immediately met by a stylish woman in her 50s. Ms. Roberts, I'm Margot Winters, your personal shopper today, she said, extending her hand. Mr. Hayes briefed me on your needs. We have approximately 3 hours to prepare you for a board meeting and evening gala. Shall we begin? What followed was unlike anything I'd experienced in my 65 years. I was guided to a private suite where an array of clothing in my size awaited. Not the discount store items I was accustomed to, but designer pieces with price tags I deliberately avoided looking at. A tailor hovered nearby, making small adjustments as Margot created looks for different occasions. For the board meeting, authority with accessibility, she explained, selecting a tailored charcoal suit with subtle crimson accents. For the gala, elegance that commands attention without ostentation. She presented a midnight blue evening gown with architectural simplicity that somehow made my silver hair look distinguished rather than aged. As Margot worked, a makeup artist and hairstylist transformed my appearance further, erasing years of strain and highlighting features I'd forgotten I possessed. The woman in the mirror became increasingly unfamiliar, not because she looked unnatural, but because she looked like the person I might have become had circumstances been different. "The final touch," Margot said, presenting a sleek leather portfolio for the meeting and a small evening clutch for the gala. "Both contain your essentials, including business cards Mr. Hayes had prepared." I opened the portfolio to find cream-colored cards reading, "Catherine Roberts, majority shareholder, Luminous Tech." The reality of my new position finally began to sink in. As I prepared to leave, now dressed in the board meeting attire that fit as though it had been waiting for me all these years, Margot handed me a small bag. "Your medication schedule, noted." "By Mr. Hayes," she said discreetly. "We've organized everything according to your doctor's instructions." This small consideration nearly undid me, the attention to my needs, not just my appearance. When had anyone last thought about my comfort so thoroughly? The driver appeared, ready to escort me to Luminous Tech headquarters. As we navigated through holiday traffic, I rehearsed what I would say at the board meeting, how I would handle seeing Olivia in this unexpected context. 43 years of invisible labor had taught me to observe, to analyze, to understand the power dynamics in any room. Today, for the first time, I would be entering not as the woman who cleaned the room after hours, but as the woman with the power to change lives, beginning with those the company planned to discard during the season of giving. The Luminous Tech. Headquarters rose before me like a gleaming monument to innovation, all glass and steel stretching skyward. The central tower, shaped like an abstract lighthouse, the company logo, dominated the downtown skyline. I'd seen this building hundreds of times, but always from the service entrance in the back where cleaning crews and maintenance workers entered through security checkpoints far from the eyes of executives and clients. Today, the driver pulled up directly to the main entrance, where a red carpet, ironically being vacuumed by someone who might lose their job today, stretched beneath a grand portico. The security guard who approached the vehicle was not one I recognized from the service entrance. "ID, please," he said professionally, then startled when he saw the credentials Julian had provided. "Ms. Roberts, we've been expecting you. Please, allow me to escort you to the executive elevator." The executive elevator. In 15 years of cleaning this building, I'd never set foot in it. My domain had been the service elevators, slow, often broken, smelling faintly of industrial cleaner. This elevator was silent, swift, with walls of polished wood and a subtle scent of something expensive. "The board meeting begins in 20 minutes. 14th floor," the guard informed me. "Mr. Hayes is waiting for you in the executive lounge." Julian stood as I entered, his expression warming with approval at my transformation. "Catherine, you look perfect. Are you ready for this?" The truth was, I didn't know. For decades, I'd been invisible in rooms like these, emptying trash bins while executives made decisions affecting thousands of lives without ever seeing the faces of those affected. Now I would sit among them, visible, with the power to be heard. "Walk me through what happens," I requested, accepting the coffee Julian offered. "The CEO, Marcus Winters, will present the restructuring plan. Olivia's marketing team has prepared materials spinning this as a facilities optimization initiative. They'll minimize the human impact. 478 employees terminated, primarily maintenance, food service, and lower-level administrative staff." My throat tightened. "Right before Christmas," Julian nodded grimly. "The timing is deliberate. The stock typically dips after layoff announcements, but recovers faster during holiday trading when volume is lower. It's calculated to minimize shareholder impact while maximizing year-end bonuses for executives. And I can stop this? With your controlling interest? Yes, though it won't make you popular with the board. They've been promised significant bonuses if the restructuring goes through." I thought of Emma's words that morning. Adults use complicated words for simple things. Restructuring, optimization. words designed to obscure the reality of families, facing the holidays without income, of dedicated workers discarded like worn-out equipment. "I don't need to be popular," I said, straightening my shoulders. "I just need to be heard." The boardroom doors were imposing, heavy wood with the company logo etched in frosted glass. As they opened for us, conversations inside immediately hushed. A dozen faces turned toward me, expressions ranging from confusion to annoyance at the interruption. At the head of the table sat Marcus Winters, the CEO whose vision had transformed Luminous Tech from a small startup into a market leader. Beside him sat his executive team, including my daughter. Olivia was mid-sentence when I entered, pointer in hand, indicating something on the presentation screen. She froze, her professional composure momentarily fractured by shock as her eyes met mine. I'd never seen her in this environment before, commanding, authoritative, dressed in a designer suit that likely cost more than 6 months of my rent. She looked powerful in a way that made my heart simultaneously swell with pride and ache with the knowledge of her shame regarding my presence in her life. "Excuse me," Marcus said, his irritation barely concealed. "This is a closed board meeting." Julian stepped forward smoothly. "Allow me to introduce Catherine Roberts, majority shareholder of Luminous Tech and the new controlling interest on your board." The silence that followed was absolute. Olivia's pointer clattered to the floor, the sound startlingly loud in the E. "Hush?" "There must be some mistake," Marcus finally said, his voice tight. "Richard Donovan's shares were placed in a trust." "I am the trustee and beneficiary of that trust," I confirmed, my voice steadier than I felt. "Richard left his controlling interest to me upon his death." "Mom?" Olivia whispered, the single word laden with confusion. I met her gaze evenly. "Hello, Olivia. Please, continue your presentation. I believe you were discussing the Facilities Optimization Initiative." A board member to my right, a silver-haired man whose office I'd cleaned countless times, who had never once acknowledged my presence, leaned forward. "I'm sorry, but who exactly are you? And how do you know Richard Donovan?" Before I could answer, Olivia found her voice. "She's my mother," she said, the words sounding strangled. "She's worked in maintenance services for years." The implied disconnect between my background and my new position hung in the air, thick with unspoken judgment. "Catherine was Richard's most trusted advisor for 15 years, Julian interjected smoothly. While officially employed in facilities management, she provided invaluable financial and strategic input that shaped many of his investment decisions, including his original investment in Luminous Tech. Marcus's expression shifted from confusion to calculation, reassessing me with new interest. "I see. Well, Ms. Roberts, you've certainly chosen an interesting time to join us. We were just reviewing our year-end restructuring proposal." "Yes. The holiday layoffs. I'd like to hear the complete presentation before discussing alternatives." "Alternatives?" Marcus echoed, his tone sharpening. "Please," I gestured to Olivia. "Continue." My daughter stood frozen for a moment before mechanically retrieving her pointer. With visible effort, she resumed her professional demeanor, though her voice trembled slightly as she outlined the redundancies being eliminated. I watched her transform living, breathing people into abstract numbers on a slide. People like me. People whose names she'd never bothered to learn, whose faces blurred together in her vision of corporate efficiency. Did she even realize that the maintenance team she was so efficiently eliminating included Maria Gonzalez, who had brought homemade tamales to share with the night cleaning crew every Christmas for 12 years? Or James Washington, a widower working 2 jobs to put his twins through college? Or Darlene Miller, who at 72 still cleaned offices with arthritis-gnarled hands because her Social Security wasn't enough to live on? The net saving to the company will be approximately $12.8 million annually, Olivia concluded, avoiding my gaze. With associated performance bonuses for the executive team totaling $3.4 million. So nearly a third of the savings from firing 478 people right before Christmas will go directly into executive bonuses, I clarified, watching the board members shift uncomfortably. The bonuses reflect the challenging work of implementing necessary organizational changes, Marcus countered smoothly. These efficiencies are essential for our continued growth. I nodded thoughtfully. And have you explored any alternatives to termination? Reduced hours? Early retirement packages? Position redesign? Marcus's smile didn't reach his eyes. With all due respect, Ms. Roberts, these decisions weren't made lightly. Our analysis indicates— I've reviewed the analysis, I interrupted, surprising myself with my boldness. And I've identified several flawed assumptions. For instance, the projected maintenance costs after outsourcing are grossly underestimated. The quality control issues alone would offset much of the supposed savings. A murmur rippled through the room. Olivia stared at me, her expression a complex mixture of embarrassment and dawning realization that her mother might understand more than she'd ever acknowledged. Furthermore, I continued, the proposal fails to account for the institutional knowledge lost with long-term employees. The replacement training costs are buried in different budget categories to make the savings appear larger. Marcus's professional veneer slipped, revealing a flash of anger. Ms. Roberts, while we welcome your input as a shareholder, these operational decisions require expertise and industry experience. Like 15 years of observing this company's operations from the ground up, I countered. Or perhaps a finance degree earned while working 3 jobs, or maybe the expertise that convinced Richard Donovan to leave me controlling interest in this company. The room fell silent again. I could feel Olivia's stunned gaze, but kept my focus on Marcus. I am formally exercising my controlling interest to table this restructuring proposal, I stated clearly. Instead, I'd like the board to consider an alternative approach I've developed with Mr. Hayes, one that achieves necessary cost efficiencies without destroying families during the holiday season. Julian distributed folders containing our counter-proposal. As the board members began reviewing the documents, I finally allowed myself to meet Olivia's eyes. The daughter who had relegated me to her basement, who had been embarrassed by my presence, who had never seen value in my work or wisdom, stared back at me as if seeing a stranger. In many ways, she was. The woman commanding this boardroom was not the mother she thought she knew, not the invisible cleaning woman, not the embarrassing relation to be hidden away. For the first time in our adult relationship, I watched my daughter truly see me. The boardroom remained silent as the directors reviewed our counter-proposal. I watched their expressions shift from skepticism to thoughtful consideration as they absorbed the details. Julian had helped me draft a comprehensive plan that would achieve the necessary cost reductions without mass terminations. Reduced executive bonuses, voluntary early retirement with generous packages, renegotiated vendor contracts, and elimination of redundant technology platforms the company was paying for, but barely using. After several minutes, Marcus closed his folder with a crisp snap. While your proposal is creative, Ms. Roberts, it significantly reduces the executive incentive structure that keeps top talent at Luminous Tech. You mean it reduces your bonus, I corrected gently, by approximately $2 million according to my calculations, yet still leaves you with a compensation package that exceeds the annual salaries of all 478 employees you plan to terminate combined. A younger board member, a woman I recognized as the tech visionary who had founded several successful startups, leaned forward. I find Ms. Roberts' approach intriguing. The impact on our public image alone would be worth considering. Mass layoffs during the holidays would generate significant negative press, while this alternative approach could position us as industry leaders in ethical corporate management. Jessica has a point, another board member agreed. The PR value of bucking the industry trend of year-end terminations would be considerable. Marcus's jaw tightened visibly. PR considerations shouldn't drive fundamental business decisions. No, I agreed. People should. The human impact should. But since that doesn't seem to be a priority, perhaps the financial implications will interest you more. I turned to the most numbers-focused board member, a former Wall Street analyst known for his ruthless attention to the bottom line. Mr. Hargrove, what's your assessment of the comparative 5-year projections in Section 3? Hargrove adjusted his glasses, scanning the relevant page. Your model suggests nearly identical long-term savings with significantly reduced implementation costs. The retention of institutional knowledge is monetized in a way I haven't seen before, but the methodology appears sound. I'd want our finance team to verify these figures, of course. Of course, I nodded. Though I should mention that your current CFO's model contains a critical flaw in how it calculates depreciation against operational savings. It's created an artificial inflation of projected returns by approximately 8.3%. The CFO, a rail-thin man with narrowed eyes, shuffled through his papers anxiously. That's not possible. Our models have been consistent for years. The error was introduced 3 quarters ago, I explained, when you switched financial modeling software but carried over formulas without adjusting for the new platform's different handling of compound calculations. It's subtle, but significant over time. Olivia was staring at me, her expression unreadable. The room had shifted, the energy reorienting toward me rather than Marcus. I could feel his growing frustration as his control of the narrative slipped away. How exactly would you know about our internal financial models? He demanded. I smiled slightly. When you clean offices after hours, you see a great deal of what appears on screens and printouts. I've been watching this company's financial reporting evolve for 15 years, often while the CFO worked late, unaware of my presence as I emptied his trash and wiped down his desk. The CFO blanched, no doubt mentally reviewing all the confidential information he'd left exposed over the years. I never betrayed any confidences, I assured him. Which is precisely why Richard trusted me. He recognized integrity when he saw it, even in someone society taught him to overlook. Marcus attempted to regain control of the meeting. This is all very interesting, but we need to make a decision. The announcements are scheduled for tomorrow. I move that we adopt Ms. Roberts' alternative approach, Jessica stated firmly. It achieves our financial goals while maintaining our workforce and our integrity. Second, Hargrove added, surprising everyone. All in favor? Julian prompted, though technically he lacked voting authority. Hands rose around the table, one by one. Olivia's remained conspicuously in her lap, her loyalty visibly torn between her boss and her mother. When the final count was taken, the vote stood at 7-4 in favor of my proposal, with one abstention. My daughter. Carried, Julian announced, satisfaction evident in his tone. Marcus's face had turned an alarming shade of red. This is highly irregular. Ms. Roberts has no experience in corporate governance. She has no understanding of the— I understand exactly what you're doing, Mr. Winters, I interrupted calmly. I understand because I've been the person receiving those termination notices. I've been the one wondering how to pay rent after losing a job right before Christmas. I've been invisible to people like you my entire career, which is precisely why I can see what you've been hiding. I turned to address the entire board. Thank you for your consideration. I look forward to working with you all to implement these changes in a way that strengthens Luminous Tech for the long term. Mr. Hayes will coordinate with your teams on next steps. As the meeting concluded, directors approached to introduce themselves, suddenly eager to connect with the company's new controlling shareholder. Through it all, I watched Olivia gather her materials, her movements stiff and mechanical, her complexion pale. When the room had emptied except for us, she finally spoke. You let me make that entire presentation knowing you were going to shut it down. Yes, I acknowledged. Just as you let me sleep in your basement knowing you were planning to fire hundreds of people like me right before Christmas. She flinched. That's different. That was business. No, Olivia, that's exactly the problem. You've learned to separate business from humanity, to see people as line items rather than lives. I needed you to complete that presentation so everyone in this room could see exactly what was being proposed, and by whom. You humiliated me, she whispered, her voice cracking. In front of my colleagues, my boss. And how do you think I felt when you introduced me to your husband as an inconvenience with an expiration date? When you hid me in your basement because you were ashamed of me? When your mother-in-law suggested I work in food service to earn my keep, and you said nothing to defend me? Tears welled in her eyes. That's not fair. I've worked so hard to get where I am. Do you know how difficult it's been, building this career? The sacrifices I've made? I laughed softly without humor. Sacrifices? Olivia, you have no idea what that word means. I cleaned office buildings at night so you could attend private school. I skipped meals so you could have new clothes. I worked through pneumonia to pay for your SAT prep courses. I postponed medical treatments to fund your semester abroad. Don't talk to me about sacrifice. She looked away, unable to meet my eyes. I never asked you to do those things. No, you just accepted them as your due. And then, when I needed one thing from you, a place to recover after an accident, you treated me like an unwelcome burden. Julian appeared at the door, discreetly signaling that we needed to leave. Catherine, we should prepare for the gala this evening. Olivia's head snapped up. You're coming to the gala? As the company's majority shareholder, it would be appropriate. Don't you think? Her eyes widened with panic. But Harrison's parents will be there, all the executives, important clients. The implication was clear. She didn't want her embarrassing mother, even in my new capacity, mingling with her sophisticated social circle. Yes, I said simply. They will all be there. And so will I. We should have a fascinating conversation about the company's new direction. As I turned to leave, Olivia called after me, her voice small. What about Emma's play? She's performing tonight. I paused, surprised she remembered. Unlike you and Harrison, I already promised her I'd try to make it. Julian, can we adjust our schedule to accommodate a children's holiday performance at 6:30? Certainly, he replied without hesitation. We can attend the play before proceeding to the gala. The look on Olivia's face, shock mingled with something like shame, stayed with me as I left the boardroom. For 43 years, I had prioritized her needs above my own. Now I was finally balancing that equation, but still finding room for my granddaughter. As we rode the executive elevator down, Julian observed, "That went even better than anticipated." Yes, I agreed, watching the floor, numbers decrease. But the real test comes tonight. The gala? No, I said softly. Sitting in an elementary school auditorium, watching my granddaughter perform, knowing that my daughter, who couldn't make time for her own child's play, will be wondering how the mother she dismissed as unimportant somehow became powerful, enough to change the trajectory of her company and hundreds of lives in a single afternoon. The elevator doors opened onto the gleaming lobby where, just hours earlier, I had entered as a stranger. Now employees nodded respectfully as I passed, whispers following in my wake. Word traveled fast in corporate America. By evening, everyone would know that Catherine Roberts, former night cleaner, now controlled Luminous Tech, and my daughter would finally understand what it meant to be truly seen. The sleek town car glided through evening traffic, carrying Emma and me toward her elementary school. Julian had arranged for a stylist to meet us at the school with my gala attire, allowing me to attend both events without choosing between them. Emma chattered excitedly beside me, still marveling at the luxurious vehicle. "Is this really your car now, Grandma?" she asked, her small fingers tracing patterns on the leather seat. "No, sweetheart, just borrowed for today." I brushed a copper curl from her forehead, noting how much she resembled me at that age, before life's hardships had carved their lines into my face. "Why are you dressed so fancy? Mom said you hurt yourself and couldn't work anymore." Children's directness could be both refreshing and painful. I had a meeting today, an important one. About your new opportunity? Her eyes widened with interest. Yes. How did you know about that? I heard you telling Mom and Grandma Peters last night. They didn't seem very excited, but I think it's cool. Are you going to be a boss now instead of cleaning? The question pierced my heart with its innocent clarity. Something like that. But cleaning was important work too, Emma. It just wasn't valued the way it should have been. She nodded solemnly. My teacher says all jobs matter because they help people. But Mom says some jobs matter more because they make more money. I made a mental note to have a serious conversation with Olivia about the values she was instilling in her daughter. What do you think, Emma? She considered this seriously. I think people matter more than jobs. Like, you matter more than being a cleaner or a boss, out of the mouths of babes. That's very wise, Emma. I wish more adults understood that. The car pulled up to Pine Ridge Elementary, its brick facade festooned with paper snowflakes and twinkling lights. Parents streamed toward the entrance, many rushing from work still wearing office attire, checking watches and phones. Grandma. Peters and Grandpa Peters said they'd meet us inside, Emma informed me as we navigated through the crowded hallway toward the auditorium. I spotted Eleanor and Walter near the front, reserving seats with expensive coats. Walter's frown deepened when he saw me approaching. Catherine, I thought you had commitments this evening. His tone made commitments sound like janitorial duties. I rearranged my schedule, I replied pleasantly. Nothing is more important than supporting Emma. Eleanor's eyes narrowed as she took in my tailored suit and professional appearance. You look different. Thank you. I smiled, offering no explanation. Emma hugged me tightly before hurrying backstage. You'll watch the whole thing, right? Grandma? Even the part where Billy Thompson forgets his lines? Every moment, I promised. As we took our seats, Walter leaned toward me. Olivia mentioned you've come into some money recently. A wise person would set it aside for retirement rather than waste it on expensive clothes. Before I could respond, the lights dimmed. I was spared having to explain that my expensive clothes had been selected by a personal stylist and charged to an account worth millions, an account that also held controlling interest in the company, that financed his son's lavish lifestyle. The elementary production was exactly as children's plays have always been, endearing in its imperfections. Emma shone as the winter fairy, delivering her lines with a confidence that reminded me of Olivia. At that age, before corporate ambition had hardened her, I found myself blinking back unexpected tears during Emma's solo, her sweet voice singing about the magic of winter bringing people together. When the performance ended, I joined the standing ovation with genuine enthusiasm. As parents crowded toward the stage to collect their children, my phone buzzed with a message from Julian. Stylist waiting in room 112. Gala begins in 45 minutes. I made my way backstage, finding Emma amidst a flurry of excited children. You were magnificent, I told her, presenting the small bouquet Julian had thoughtfully arranged. Her face glowed with pleasure. You really came, I promised, didn't I? The simple statement hung between us, carrying more weight than she could understand. A contrast to the broken promises that had characterized her mother's relationship with her. Will you come back to our house now? Grandma Peters said we're having ice cream sundaes. I have another event tonight, but I'll see you tomorrow. Maybe we could do something special together? Eleanor appeared behind Emma, her expression tight. There you are. We should be going. As Emma hugged me goodbye, Eleanor studied me with unconcealed suspicion. That's quite a transformation, Catherine. I assume this opportunity Olivia mentioned involves more than janitorial work? I smiled. You might say that. Please tell Emma I'll see her tomorrow. The stylist waiting in room 112 worked with efficient precision, helping me change from my board meeting attire into the midnight blue evening gown. As she made final adjustments to my hair and makeup, I caught my reflection in the mirror, A stranger looking back at me, elegant and composed, ready to enter a world that had excluded me for decades. Julian met me at the car. "You look exceptional, Catherine." His professional demeanor softened momentarily. Richard would be proud. The Windsor Hotel's grand ballroom blazed with light as we approached, valets rushing to open doors for arriving executives and their partners. Inside, crystal chandeliers illuminated a scene of corporate opulence: ice sculptures, champagne fountains, a string quartet playing tasteful holiday music. The wealth on display represented millions in bonuses, stock options, and salaries. Wealth built on the labor of people like me, the invisible workforce that kept Luminous Tech functioning. Conversations hushed as I entered, Julian at my side. Whispers rippled through the crowd, executives nudging one another, eyes widening in recognition. The news had traveled fast. The cleaning woman was now majority shareholder. The janitor had become judge of their fates. Marcus Winters approached. First, his corporate mask firmly in place. "Ms. Roberts, welcome to our annual celebration. I believe we have much to discuss regarding the changes you've instituted." "Indeed," I agreed. "Though tonight seems more appropriate for celebration than business. I'm particularly celebrating the 478 employees who will still have jobs after the holidays." His smile tightened. "Yes, well, public relations has already begun crafting a message about our commitment to our luminous family during the holiday season. I'd appreciate the opportunity to review your final plans before implementation." "I'm sure you would," I said pleasantly. "Mr. Hayes will coordinate with your team tomorrow. Tonight, I'd like to meet the people who make this company successful, all of them." I spotted Olivia across the room, engaged in conversation with Harrison and several executives. Her eyes found mine, widening in shock as she registered my transformation. No longer the embarrassing mother in worn clothing, I stood before her luminous family as someone they would have to acknowledge, respect, perhaps even fear. As Julian guided me through the crowd making introductions, I noticed something striking. The catering staff, the coat check attendants, the bartenders and servers moved through the room with the same invisibility I had known for years. Executives held out empty glasses without looking at the hands that filled them, handed over coats without acknowledging the people who took them. When a server approached with a tray of champagne, I smiled directly at her. "Thank you. What's your name?" The young woman blinked in surprise. "Anna, ma'am." "Thank you, Anna. I appreciate your work tonight." Her expression shifted from shock to a small, grateful smile before she continued through the crowd. Such a simple acknowledgement, yet so rarely offered in these circles. I continued this practice throughout the evening, noting with satisfaction how other attendees noticed and sometimes awkwardly followed suit. Small revolutions begin with small gestures of humanity. Harrison approached, his usual confidence somewhat diminished. "Catherine, I hardly recognized you. Olivia mentioned you've had quite a day." "Yes, it's been enlightening. For everyone, I think." He shifted uncomfortably. "About your staying with us. Of course you're welcome for as long as you need. The basement situation was just temporary. We can move you to the guest suite immediately." I smiled, recognizing the swift adaptation of someone who suddenly realized he'd misjudged a power dynamic. "That's very kind, Harrison. We'll discuss arrangements tomorrow." As he retreated, I caught sight of Olivia watching us, her expression a complex mixture of emotions I couldn't fully decipher. Our confrontation was inevitable, but it would come on my terms now, not hers. The gala continued, a swirl of silk and diamonds, power, and pretense. I watched as executives who had voted for my proposal earlier now vied for my attention, suddenly interested in my insights on company operations. It was remarkable how quickly perceptions shifted when power dynamics changed. The cleaning woman they'd walked past for years without acknowledgement was now someone they courted with flattery and business cards. After circulating for nearly an hour, I finally found myself face to face with Olivia. She stood alone near a window, champagne flute clutched tightly in her hand, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. "You should have told me," she said quietly as I approached. "Would it have changed how you treated me?" I countered, keeping my voice equally low. "Would you have offered me the guest suite instead of the basement if you'd known I controlled your company's future?" Her cheeks flushed. "That's not fair." No, it wasn't fair. Just as it wasn't fair that I've spent decades being treated as less than human because of the work I did. Work that kept your offices clean, your bathrooms sanitary, your workspace functional. Work that allowed you to focus on climbing corporate ladders without ever acknowledging those of us holding those ladders steady. She glanced around anxiously. "Can we not do this here?" "Where would you prefer, Olivia? The basement?" The barb landed as intended. She flinched, then straightened her shoulders, the corporate armor sliding back into place. "I've worked incredibly hard to build my reputation here. Everything I've accomplished has been through my own merit." I laughed softly. "Your own merit? Who paid for the education that opened these doors? Who worked 3 jobs so you could attend Princeton without student loans? Who sacrificed everything so you could start your career debt-free, while I postponed medical care to make sure you had professional clothes for interviews? I didn't ask you to do those things," she insisted, echoing her earlier protest. "No, you just accepted them as your due. And then," I continued, "when I needed something, basic human compassion, a place to recover after an accident, you treated me like an inconvenience, an embarrassment to be hidden away." A server passed by, offering champagne. I smiled and thanked him by name, noting how Olivia hadn't even glanced in his direction. The contrast wasn't lost on either of us. "I see them," I said after a moment. "All the invisible people you've trained yourself not to notice. I was one of them until today." Olivia's professional composure cracked slightly. "Is that what this is about? Revenge? Humiliating me to punish me?" "No, Olivia. It's about justice. For the 478 people you were prepared to fire 2 days before Christmas. For every employee who's been treated as disposable by this company. And yes, perhaps a little for myself too. For the mother who gave everything and received contempt in return." Before she could respond, Marcus Winters approached, his corporate smile firmly in place. "Ms. Roberts, I was hoping to introduce you to some of our key investors. They're quite interested in meeting Luminous Tech's new controlling shareholder, Ike." Nodded. "Of course. Excuse us, Olivia. Perhaps we can continue our conversation later, in the guest suite rather than the basement." As Marcus led me away, I caught sight of Harrison watching the exchange with calculating eyes. My newfound position had clearly forced a recalibration of their family dynamics. I was no longer the embarrassing mother-in-law to be hidden away, but a power player who could influence their financial future. The remainder of the evening passed in a blur of introductions and superficial conversations. I found myself performing a role I'd never imagined: corporate power broker, majority shareholder, a woman whose opinions suddenly mattered to people who would have ignored me just days ago. There was a certain intoxication to it, I had to admit. Being seen after decades of invisibility carried its own heady satisfaction. Around 11, Julian appeared at my side. "The car is ready whenever you'd like to leave." I nodded gratefully. The evening had been exhausting, both physically and emotionally. My hip throbbed despite the medication, and I found myself longing for quiet after hours of performance. As we made our way toward the exit, I spotted Eleanor and Walter Peters in animated conversation with Harrison. Their expressions suggested the topic was serious, likely me and the dramatic shift in our family's power balance. When they noticed me watching, Walter's face reddened, while Eleanor offered a tight, artificial smile. Catherine, we were just discussing your remarkable transition, Eleanor called out with forced brightness. Harrison was explaining your new position at Luminous. I approached them, noting how Walter straightened his posture as I neared, a subtle physical acknowledgement of changed status. It's been quite a day, I said simply. Walter cleared his throat. Indeed, quite the surprise for everyone. I trust you'll be moving to more suitable accommodations now? The implication was clear. My new status entitled me to better treatment. Not because I deserved dignity as a human being, but because I now wielded financial power. I haven't decided my next steps yet, I replied, though I must say, your son and daughter have suddenly become much more accommodating regarding my stay. Eleanor's smile tightened further. Well, naturally, families should support one another. How interesting that you believe that now, I observed, mildly. Last night at dinner, you seemed to have a rather different perspective on family obligations. Walter stepped in, his business instincts engaging. Water under the bridge, surely. We should all look forward now. Perhaps we could have dinner tomorrow. Discuss how we might support your new venture? I smiled. My venture is ensuring that Luminous Tech operates with both profitability and humanity. That includes treating all workers with dignity, from executives to maintenance staff. Perhaps that's something we could indeed discuss over dinner. Their discomfort was palpable. To people like the Peters, maintenance workers were functionally invisible, necessary but not worthy of consideration. The idea of treating them as equals was as foreign as suggesting they invite their gardener to Thanksgiving dinner. Julian cleared his throat discreetly. Ms. Roberts, the car is waiting. Of course. If you'll excuse me, I nodded to the Peters. I've had a rather exhausting day preventing hundreds of families from losing their livelihoods right before Christmas. As I turned to leave, I caught sight of Olivia watching from across the room, her expression unreadable. Our unfinished conversation hung between us like a suspended note, waiting for resolution. I knew we would need to talk, truly talk, about everything that had happened and what it meant for our future. But that conversation would wait for tomorrow. Tonight, I needed rest and reflection. The town car was blissfully quiet after the noise of the gala. As we pulled away from the Windsor Hotel, Julian studied me with thoughtful eyes. You handled that remarkably well, he observed. Richard would have been pleased. I'm not sure what I'm doing, Julian, I admitted, finally allowing some of my uncertainty to show. I spent decades being invisible, and now suddenly I'm the center of attention. I'm not sure I know how to navigate this new reality. He nodded. It's a significant adjustment, but you've already demonstrated more wisdom and compassion than most people suddenly granted such power. The board meeting today proved that. I prevented the layoffs, yes, but changing a corporate culture of disposability and dehumanization? That's a much larger challenge. One step at a time, Julian advised. You've already made an impact. Those 478 employees will have a very different holiday season because of your actions today. I leaned back against the leather seat, allowing myself to feel a moment of genuine satisfaction. Whatever came next with Olivia, with Luminous Tech, with my new position of influence, I had accomplished something meaningful today. People who might have faced unemployment and desperation would instead continue their lives uninterrupted, their dignity intact. As the car glided through night-darkened streets toward Olivia's house, I considered what awaited me there. No longer would I be relegated to the basement, but the newfound respect I would receive wasn't based on genuine recognition of my worth as a person, only my financial power. The revelation was both liberating and saddening. Julian, I said quietly as we approached the house, I don't think I want to stay here tonight. He glanced at me questioningly. Is there somewhere else I could go? A hotel, perhaps? I need space to think, to process everything that's happened. Without hesitation, he nodded. Of course. Richard maintained a suite at the Hawthorne. It's yours now, if you'd like to use it. I thought of Olivia and Harrison inside, likely still at the gala, but eventually returning to find me gone. They would worry, perhaps even feel guilty. That wasn't my intention, but I needed distance, physical and emotional, to determine my next steps. Yes, I decided. The Hawthorne, please. As the car changed direction, heading toward downtown, I felt a weight lifting. For the first time in decades, perhaps for the first time in my adult life, I was making a decision based solely on my own needs. Not sacrificing for Olivia, not compromising for financial necessity, not accommodating others at my expense. Tonight, I would sleep in comfort, attended by respect rather than condescension. Tomorrow would bring difficult conversations and decisions, but for now, I allowed myself to simply exist in this moment of newfound autonomy. The Hawthorne Hotel embodied old-world luxury, a stark contrast to the basement room I'd occupied the previous night. The suite Julian brought me to featured a spacious living area with a crackling fireplace, a bedroom with a king-sized bed draped in Egyptian cotton, and a marble bathroom bigger than my entire apartment. Richard's suite, now mine. The thought was still difficult to comprehend. Richard kept this suite for visiting clients and personal use, Julian explained as a bellhop delivered my small suitcase, retrieved from Olivia's house on Julian's instructions. It's paid through the year. The staff know to expect you now. After Julian left, promising to return in the morning to discuss next steps, I wandered through the rooms in silent wonder. The contrast between this luxury and my lifetime of struggle was jarring. For decades, I had cleaned spaces like this, invisibly maintaining them for others' comfort. Now, somehow, I occupied this rarefied world. My phone buzzed repeatedly, text, messages and voicemails from Olivia, each growing increasingly concerned. Mom, where are you? Harrison said you aren't in the guest room. Mom, please call me, I'm worried. Mom, the hotel said you asked for your suitcase. Are you okay? Please just let me know you're safe. Her concern seemed genuine, but I wasn't ready to engage. Instead, I texted simply, I'm safe. Staying elsewhere tonight. We'll call tomorrow. Her response was immediate. Mom, please, we need to talk. I'm sorry about everything. Sorry. The word seemed inadequate for a lifetime of dismissal, for treating me as if my existence was something to hide, for valuing my utility, but never my humanity. But it was a start. Tomorrow, I replied. I need time to think. I turned off my phone and ran a bath in the enormous soaking tub, easing my aching body into water scented with bath salts I would once have considered an unthinkable extravagance. As I soaked, I contemplated the dramatic shift in my circumstances. Money and power had changed everything, not just material comforts, but how the world perceived me. The same person who had been invisible yesterday was courted today. The same wisdom that had been ignored when it came from a cleaning woman was suddenly brilliant when it came from a majority shareholder. The inequality of it all struck me with renewed force. Nothing about me had fundamentally changed. My intelligence, my character, my worth as a human being remained the same. Only my financial status had shifted, yet that alone transformed how I was treated by everyone from my daughter to corporate executives. After my bath, wrapped in a plush hotel robe, I ordered room service, another novelty. The young woman who delivered my meal smiled warmly. I'm Denise, Ms. Roberts. Anything else you need? Just call down. Thank you, Denise. I hesitated, then asked, How long have you worked at the Hawthorne? 3 years next month. Putting myself through nursing school. She arranged the cupboard. Dishes with practiced efficiency. Night shifts? She looked up, surprised by my interest. Yes, ma'am. Classes during the day, work at night. Not much sleep, but it'll be worth it. I smiled, recognition flowing between us. Yes, it will. Though I hope you have more support than I did. As Denise left, I felt a sense of purpose crystallizing. My new position offered more than personal comfort. It offered the power to effect real change, to make visible those who had been systematically rendered invisible, to create systems that valued all labor, not just the kind performed in boardrooms. Slept better that night than I had in years, cradled in luxury and possibility. Morning brought a sense of calm determination as I prepared to face Olivia and the future. Julian arrived promptly at 9, carrying a portfolio of documents and a newspaper. "You've made the business section," he announced, handing me the paper. The headline read, "Former janitor now controls Luminous Tech. Christmas layoffs averted." The article detailed yesterday's board meeting, portraying me as a Cinderella story, the cleaning woman who rose to power and saved hundreds of jobs. It mentioned my connection to Olivia only in passing, focusing instead on my long association with Richard Donovan and the unique perspective I brought to corporate governance. "The PR team has been working overtime," Julian observed. "Marcus is trying to control the narrative, making it sound like a heartwarming holiday miracle rather than an indictment of corporate culture," I noted. "Clever? Very. But it still raises questions about executive compensation and layoff practices that many companies would prefer remain unexamined." After reviewing pressing business matters, I finally turned my phone back on. 8 missed calls from Olivia, 3 from Harrison, even 1 from Eleanor Peters. I ignored them all temporarily and called Emma's phone instead. "Grandma!" Her voice was bright with excitement. "Mom said you're famous now. Are you really the boss of her company?" I laughed. "It's complicated, sweetheart, but I wanted to see if you're free for lunch today, just you and me." "Yes," she didn't hesitate. "Can we go to Millie's Cafe? They have the best hot chocolate with extra whipped cream." "Millie's it is. I'll pick you up at noon." After arranging for a car to take me to Millie's, I finally called Olivia. She answered on the first ring. "Mom." Her voice sounded tired, strained. "Where are you?" "At the Hawthorne. I needed space to think." "The Hawthorne?" She sounded confused. "How can you—" She stopped herself, reality clearly sinking in. "Right, of course." "I'm taking Emma to lunch today," I said. "Just the 2 of us." A pause. "She'd like that. She couldn't stop talking about you this morning. Apparently, you're her new hero." The simple statement warmed something in me. "I'm picking her up at noon. I'll bring her home afterward, and perhaps then we can talk." "Yes," Olivia agreed quietly. "We need to talk about everything." Everything encompassed so much. A lifetime of sacrifice and resentment, of love and disappointment, of invisible labor and unacknowledged worth. I wasn't sure a single conversation could address it all, but it was a necessary start. "Until then," I said, ending the call. Millie's Cafe was a charming establishment I'd never been able to afford, a fact that struck me anew as Emma and I settled into a cozy booth. My granddaughter seemed unfazed by the changes in me, accepting my new appearance and circumstances with the fluidity only children possess. "Mom says you're rich now," she stated matter-of-factly, stirring whipped cream into her hot chocolate. "Is that why you're not staying with us anymore?" "No, Emma. Money doesn't change where I want to be. I just needed some time alone to think about everything that's happening." She nodded with surprising understanding. "Like when I go to my thinking spot in the backyard when Jacob breaks my toys." "Exactly like that." I smiled, struck by her innate wisdom. Sometimes we need space to figure out how we feel about things. "Are you mad at Mom? She was crying last night after the party." The revelation surprised me. Olivia had always been careful to maintain her composure, even as a child. The thought of her crying suggested a depth of emotion I hadn't anticipated. "I'm not mad, exactly," I tried to explain. "I'm hurt. There's a difference." "Like when Mom forgot my science fair?" Emma suggested. I wasn't mad that she missed it. I was sad because she promised she'd come. Yes, like that. Promises matter, don't they? And how we treat people matters, too. Emma took a thoughtful sip of her hot chocolate. Mom said she messed up with you. She said she didn't see you before. What do you think she meant by that? Emma considered this seriously. Maybe like how I don't really see the lunch ladies. At school? I know they're there, but I don't think about them being real people with families and dogs and stuff. The insight was startling in its clarity. That's very perceptive, Emma. But you've always been real to me, Grandma, she added earnestly. Even when you were just cleaning, you're the realest person I know. Tears pricked my eyes at the simple statement. Thank you, Emma. That means more than you know. The remainder of our lunch passed in lighter conversation. Her school projects, friends, the book she was reading. Throughout, I marveled at her emotional intelligence and wondered how to ensure she developed differently than her mother, maintaining that clear-eyed perception of human worth beyond status or wealth. As our meal concluded, I made a decision. Emma, would you like to do something special with me this weekend? Something important? Her eyes widened with interest. Like what? I need to visit some people who work at your mother's company. People who clean the buildings and take care of things, like I used to do. I want to hear about their lives, their families. Would you come with me? She nodded enthusiastically. That sounds way better than the country club brunch with Grandma Peters. She always tells me not to slouch and says my voice is too loud. I smiled, understanding exactly what she meant. It's settled then. Now, let's get you home. I need to have that talk with your mother. As our car approached Olivia's house, I felt a strange mixture of trepidation and strength. The conversation ahead would be difficult, painful even, but necessary for both of us. Whatever happened, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I would never again allow myself to be rendered invisible by my daughter or anyone else. Olivia was waiting when Emma and I arrived. She stood in the doorway, watching our approach with an expression I couldn't quite read, anxiety mixed with something like determination. Gone was the polished corporate executive from yesterday's board meeting. Today she wore jeans and a simple sweater, her hair pulled back in a casual ponytail, her face free of makeup. She looked younger, more vulnerable, more like the daughter I remembered. "Did you have a good lunch?" she asked Emma, her voice carefully neutral. "The best," Emma declared. "Grandma says I can go with her this weekend to meet the people who clean her buildings. It's for an important project." Olivia's eyebrows rose slightly, but she simply nodded. "That sounds interesting. Why don't you go upstairs and start your homework? Mom and I need to talk." As Emma disappeared inside, Olivia turned to me. "Would you like to come in? I've made coffee." The formal invitation to enter what had once been presented as my temporary shelter struck me as both ironic and sad. Yes, thank you. The house felt different somehow. Or perhaps I was the one who had changed. The opulence that had once seemed so imposing now registered simply as tasteful affluence, no more intimidating than the suite at the Hawthorne where I'd spent the night. Olivia led me not to the formal living room but to the sunroom at the back of the house. A cozier space with comfortable furniture and natural light streaming through large windows overlooking the garden. 2 mugs of coffee waited on the low table, along with a plate of the almond cookies I'd always favored. "You remembered," I said, gesturing to the cookies. "Of course I remembered." Olivia's voice held a note of hurt. "You're my mother." The simple statement hung between us, laden with unspoken history. I was her mother, the woman who had sacrificed everything for her future, who had shaped her earliest understanding of the world, who had both loved her fiercely and apparently failed to instill in her the values I held most dear. We sat in silence for a moment, neither quite ready to begin the difficult conversation ahead. Finally, Olivia spoke. "I've been trying to understand what happened." How you went from cleaning Richard Donovan's offices to inheriting his fortune. It doesn't seem real. Not the fairy tale you expected for your cleaning lady mother. I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. She flinched. I deserve that, but I really do want to understand. I sighed, deciding candor was the only path forward. Richard noticed me because I noticed things others missed. When I cleaned his offices at night, I would sometimes find financial reports left open. I have a finance degree, Olivia. Did you know that? Her eyes widened. No. You never said. You never asked, I countered. Never once in 20 years did you ask what I studied during those night classes I attended while working 3 jobs to support us. She looked away, the truth of this clearly striking home. I would leave small notes sometimes, I continued. Observations about inconsistencies in reports, suggestions about investment strategies. Richard noticed. He started testing me, deliberately leaving more complex financial analyses for me to find. Eventually, he realized I had a natural aptitude for market patterns that many of his paid advisors lacked. All those years, Olivia whispered. While you were cleaning, you were also being seen by someone who looked past my uniform. I finished for her. Richard was the first person in decades who valued my mind as much as my labor. Olivia's hands trembled slightly as she reached for her coffee. I don't know what to say. I feel like I never really knew you. You didn't try to know me, I said softly. You were too busy being embarrassed by what I did to notice who I was. Tears welled in her eyes. That's not fair. I was proud of you, of your work ethic, your sacrifices. Were you? When was the last time you introduced me to your colleagues as your mother, without immediately qualifying it with an explanation about my job? When did you ever invite me to your corporate events, your dinner parties? When did you ever acknowledge that the education that opened doors for you came at the cost of my dignity, my health, my own dreams? A tear slipped down her cheek. I didn't see it that way. I thought I was honoring your sacrifices by succeeding, by making something of myself, by ensuring those sacrifices weren't wasted. And yet, when I needed a place to stay, just a place to recover from an accident, you hid me in your basement, because I was an embarrassment to you. It wasn't like that, she protested weakly, but we both knew it was exactly like that. Do you know what hurt most? I asked, my own eyes filling with tears. It wasn't the basement room or your mother-in-law's condescension. It was realizing that after everything I gave you, all the love, all the sacrifice, all the opportunities, you never once saw me as fully human. I was functional to you, Olivia. Useful, but not equal. Not worthy of the same dignity you afford. Your colleagues or your in-laws. She covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Part of me wanted to comfort her as I always had, to smooth away her pain. But another part, the part that had finally found its voice, needed her to face this truth without mitigation. I'm so sorry, she finally managed, her voice breaking. I didn't understand. I didn't see. And that's the problem, isn't it? Not just with you, but with this whole system we've created. Some people are deemed worthy of visibility, of dignity, of decent treatment. Others are rendered invisible, essential but unseen, necessary but not valued. She looked up, wiping tears from her face. What can I do? How do I fix this? The question was both genuine and inadequate. It's not about fixing our relationship with a single conversation, Olivia. It's about fundamentally changing how you see the world and your place in it. It's about recognizing the humanity in every person who makes your life possible, from the janitors at Luminous Tech to the server. Who brings your coffee? I want to do better, she said softly. I want to be better. Then start seeing people, really seeing them. Learn the names of the cleaning staff at your office. Acknowledge the humans behind the services you consume. Recognize that your success was built not just on your talent and hard work, but on a system that privileged you while exploiting others, including your own mother. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of decades of misunderstanding between us. Finally, Olivia spoke again. Emma said you're taking her to meet the cleaning staff this weekend? I nodded. I'm establishing a foundation, the Invisible Workers Fund. It will provide educational scholarships for service workers and their children, emergency assistance for medical needs, and advocacy for fair wages and treatment. I want Emma to understand from an early age what you never learned, that all work has dignity and all workers deserve respect. Can I come? The question was tentative, uncertain. I studied her face, searching for sincerity. Why would you want to? Because I need to see what I've been missing. And because... She hesitated. Because I want to know my mother. The real you. Not just the version of you I created in my mind. It was a start. Imperfect, but honest. Yes, you can come. But not as the vice president of marketing, just as Olivia, Emma's mother, my daughter. No corporate armor, no professional distance, she nodded, understanding the distinction. Just me. I think I've forgotten who that is anyway. The conversation continued into the afternoon, occasionally painful but necessary. We discussed Richard, Donovan, the inheritance, my plans for the future. We talked about her childhood, my sacrifices, the distance that had grown between us as she ascended the corporate ladder. There were more tears, from both of us, but also moments of connection we hadn't experienced in years. As evening approached, Harrison returned home, clearly uncertain how to navigate the transformed dynamics between us. He hovered in the doorway of the sunroom, his usual confidence noticeably diminished. "Catherine," he nodded cautiously, "will you be staying for dinner, or—" He glanced at Olivia. Returning to the Hawthorne? The question hung in the air, laden with implications about where I belonged, where I was welcome. Before I could answer, Olivia spoke. "Mom is welcome to stay wherever she feels comfortable," she said firmly. "The guest suite is prepared if she wants it, but her choices are her own now." The subtle shift in language, from obligation to autonomy, didn't escape me. It represented a small but significant change in how she perceived me. "Thank you," I said. "I think I'll return to the Hawthorne tonight. I have an early meeting with Julian tomorrow about the foundation, but I'd like to have dinner here first if that's all right, with my family." Olivia's smile was tentative but genuine. "We'd like that very much." As Harrison retreated to the kitchen to start dinner preparations, a role I'd never seen him assume before, Olivia turned to me with serious eyes. "This isn't fixed," she acknowledged. "One conversation doesn't erase years of blindness on my part." "No," I agreed, "but it's a beginning. And sometimes that's enough for one day." We called Emma down to help with dinner, the 3 generations of women working together in the kitchen, chopping vegetables, setting the table, moving around each other in a dance of tentative reconciliation. Nothing was fully resolved, nothing completely healed. But in the simple act of preparing a meal together, of seeing and acknowledging one another's contributions, we found a glimmer of the path forward. 6 months had passed since that fateful December day when I'd arrived at Olivia's doorstep, broken and homeless. Spring had given way to summer, warming the city and bringing new growth, both literal and metaphorical, to our lives. The Invisible Workers Fund had become my primary focus, growing from concept to reality with remarkable speed. We'd established offices in a renovated warehouse downtown, deliberately choosing a location accessible by public transportation for the workers we aimed to serve. In just 6 months, we'd distributed over $3 million in educational scholarships, emergency medical assistance, and housing support to service workers throughout the city. Today marked a significant milestone, the official launch of our advocacy branch, which would focus on policy change and corporate accountability regarding treatment of service workers. Julian had helped me navigate the legal complexities, leveraging my position as Luminous Tech's majority shareholder to push for industry-wide reforms. The launch was being hosted at Luminous Tech headquarters, a symbolic choice that highlighted the company's new direction. Marcus Winters had eventually adapted to the changing corporate culture, recognizing that the positive publicity from our initiatives was actually improving both employee retention and customer loyalty. The board had unanimously approved a comprehensive new approach to facilities management that included living wages, health benefits, and educational opportunities for all staff, regardless of position. I stood at the edge of the gathering, watching, as executives, community leaders, media representatives, and, most importantly, service workers from across the city mingled in the company's grand atrium. The distinction between important guests and support staff had been deliberately blurred, with name tags that listed individuals' names but not their positions or companies, forcing people to actually engage in conversation to learn about one another. "Quite a triumph," Julian observed, appearing at my side with 2 glasses of champagne. "Richard would be immensely proud." I accepted the glass with a smile. "Not just of the foundation, I think. He'd be proud of how Luminous has evolved." Across the room, Olivia was deep in conversation with Maria Gonzalez, the longtime member of the cleaning staff whose tamales had once been a Christmas tradition among the night crew. They sat together at a table, Emma between them, all 3 laughing at something Maria had said. The change in Olivia over these past months had been gradual but profound. The corporate armor she'd worn for so long had softened, revealing glimpses of the compassionate, curious daughter I'd raised. She still excelled in her role as VP of Marketing, but approached it with a new perspective, one that recognized the humanity in every person who contributed to the company's success. Our relationship remained a work in progress. There were still uncomfortable moments, still wounds that needed healing. But we were both committed to building something new between us, something based on mutual respect rather than obligation or expectation. "Catherine!" Eleanor Peters approached, her usual reserve tempered by a newfound warmth. "The foundation launch is splendid. Harrison tells me you've already secured commitments from 6 major corporations to adopt your employment standards. Relationship had evolved as well. While I doubted Eleanor would ever fully understand my perspective, she had made efforts to acknowledge my accomplishments and position. Whether this stemmed from genuine respect or merely the recognition of my financial power remained unclear, but I chose to accept the improvement at face value. "Yes, we're making progress," I agreed, though there's still significant resistance to viewing service work as deserving of the same dignity and compensation as other forms of labor. "Well, you've certainly changed my thinking on the matter," she admitted with surprising candor. Walter and I had never considered the people who maintain our club or clean our home as having, lives as complex as our own. This was as close to an epiphany as Eleanor was likely to experience, and I acknowledged it with a smile. That's exactly the shift in perspective we're trying to create. A commotion near the entrance drew our attention. Darlene Miller, the 72-year-old cleaner with arthritic hands who had been among the first recipients of medical assistance from the foundation, arrived with several members of her extended family. Thanks to comprehensive joint replacement surgery and rehabilitation funded by our program, she moved with remarkable ease, her spine straight and her smile broad. I excused myself from Eleanor and made my way to greet Darlene, who enveloped me in a warm embrace. "Catherine Roberts," she said, holding me at arm's length to examine me. "Looking fancy as ever these days, but still the same kind soul who used to share her coffee with me during break time. And you're looking wonderful, Darlene. How are the new knees treating you?" "Changed my life," she declared. "I can play with my great-grandchildren now. Even went dancing last weekend. First time in 15 years. This was why the foundation mattered. Not abstract principles of equality, but tangible improvements in human lives. Every surgery funded, every scholarship granted, every housing crisis averted represented a person whose dignity had been affirmed, whose humanity had been recognized. As the formal program began, I took my place near the podium. Emma slipped through the crowd to stand beside me, slipping her small hand into mine. At 10 years old, she had become the Foundation's unofficial youth ambassador, accompanying me on site visits and speaking with remarkable eloquence about the importance of seeing people, truly seeing them, regardless of their job or social status. "Nervous, Grandma?" she whispered as Julian approached the microphone to introduce me. "A little," I admitted. "Public speaking isn't something I've had much practice with." She squeezed my hand. "You'll be great. Just talk like you do when you tell me stories about the invisible people who make the world work." Her simple encouragement steadied me. When Julian called my name, I approached the podium with confidence that would have been unimaginable 6 months ago. "Thank you all for coming today," I began, surveying the diverse crowd. "Many of you have asked why I named our organization the Invisible Workers Fund. The answer is simple. For most of my life, I was invisible. I shared my story, not with shame or resentment, but as illustration of a systemic problem. I spoke of cleaning offices while executives made decisions that affected lives without ever acknowledging the humans who maintained their workspaces. I described the subtle indignities of being overlooked, dismissed, treated as function rather than person. And I outlined our vision for a world where all labor was recognized as valuable, all workers seen as fully human. As I concluded my remarks, I noticed Olivia standing at the back of the room, tears streaming unchecked down her face. Our eyes met across the crowded atrium, a moment of perfect understanding between mother and daughter. "In launching our advocacy branch today," I continued, "we're committing to changing not just individual lives, but the systems that render some workers invisible while elevating others. This isn't charity, it's justice. It's recognition that dignity shouldn't be determined by job title or salary." The applause was enthusiastic and prolonged. As people rose to their feet, I noticed something remarkable. Executives stood shoulder to shoulder with maintenance workers, administrative assistants alongside corporate lawyers, all united in affirmation of a simple truth. Every person deserves to be seen. After the formalities concluded, I found myself surrounded by well-wishers from all walks of life. Through the crowd, I spotted Olivia approaching with Harrison. The transformation in my son-in-law had perhaps been the most surprising development of these past months. Once the embodiment of corporate entitlement, he had embraced the Foundation's mission with unexpected passion, leveraging his banking connections to establish microloans for service workers with entrepreneurial ambitions. "Mom," Olivia said, embracing me warmly, "your speech was perfect. You made everyone understand without making them feel attacked." "A skill I learned from years of offering suggestions without offending the person who'd made the mistake," I replied. "Riley." She winced slightly, recognizing that she had once been among those who had failed to see me. "I wanted to tell you something before we make the public announcement tomorrow. Harrison and I have decided to donate 20% of our Luminous stock to the Foundation." The gesture was both generous and symbolic, a tangible commitment to balancing the scales that had been tilted for so long. "That's incredibly generous," I said. "It's the right thing to do," Harrison replied simply. "And we want Emma to grow up understanding that wealth comes with responsibility, not just privilege." As if summoned by her name, my granddaughter appeared at Olivia's side. "Mom says I can intern at the Foundation this summer," she announced excitedly. 2 days a week. I want to help with the scholarship program for kids." I smiled at her enthusiasm. "We'd be honored to have you. Though I suspect you'll end up teaching us more than we teach you." The launch event continued into the evening, transitioning from formal program to celebration. I circulated through the crowd, still somewhat amazed at the ease with which I now navigated these social waters. The insecure cleaning woman who had once feared being noticed now commanded respect without effort, spoke with authority without apology. As the gathering began to wind down, I stepped out onto the terrace for a moment of quiet reflection. The city spread before me, lights twinkling in the summer dusk. Somewhere out there, people were cleaning offices, emptying trash bins, maintaining the spaces others would occupy tomorrow. Invisible workers continuing their essential labor while others rested. Julian joined me at the railing, reflecting on how far we've come. On how far we still have to go, I corrected gently. Today is significant, but it's just the beginning. He nodded. True enough. Though you've already accomplished more in 6 months than many do in a lifetime. Because I had the power and platform to be heard, I reminded him. How many others with equally valuable insights remain unheard because they lack that platform? Which is precisely why your foundation matters, he countered. You're creating those platforms, building those bridges. Behind us, the door opened, and Olivia emerged. There you are. Emma's looking for you. She wants to introduce you to her teacher. Apparently, she brought her entire class here tonight. I smiled at the thought of my granddaughter proudly showing off her grandmother. Not hiding her away, but celebrating her. The contrast with Olivia's previous embarrassment couldn't have been more stark. Mom? Olivia said hesitantly. I've been thinking about something. Would you consider moving in with us? Properly this time. The guest suite, as it always should, have been. Or we could convert the office into a private apartment for you, with your own entrance. Whatever would make you comfortable. The offer was sincere, I could see that. A genuine attempt to make amends, to create the family connection we should have had all along. Thank you, I said carefully. That means more than you know, but I think I need my own space now. After decades of accommodating others, I'm learning to prioritize my own needs. Rather than appearing hurt, Olivia nodded with understanding. I respect that, though Emma will be disappointed. Tell her she's welcome to stay with me at my new place whenever she likes. It's just 10 minutes from your house. We stood together at the railing, mother and daughter, watching the city lights. So much had changed between us. So much healing had occurred. So much understanding had grown. The wounds of December hadn't fully scarred over, perhaps never would. But something new had emerged from that painful revelation. Something more honest, more equal, more real. We should get back inside, Olivia finally said. They're waiting for the final toast. As we turned to rejoin the celebration, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. From invisible to influential, from dismissed to dominant, from basement to boardroom, my transformation had been remarkable by any measure. But the true victory wasn't in the material changes or the public recognition. It was in being seen, truly seen, not just by the world but by my own daughter, and in helping her learn to see others as I had once needed to be seen myself. That, more than any foundation or corporate reform, would be my lasting legacy. The door closed behind us as we stepped back into the light, back into the gathering, of visible workers whose dignity would never again be overlooked. At least not in my presence, not while I had breath and voice to remind the world of their essential humanity. I'd be happy to write an epilogue or additional part to continue this story. Here's the conclusion to Catherine's journey. 1 year later, the summer breeze carried the scent of fresh-cut grass and blooming roses through the open French doors of my penthouse terrace. From this vantage point, I could see much of the city, including the luminous tech tower with its distinctive lighthouse shape gleaming in the morning sun. The view never failed to remind me how dramatically life could change in a single year. More coffee, Ms. Roberts? Denise, no longer a hotel employee but my personal assistant, appeared with a carafe. Thank you, Denise. How's the nursing program? Coming along? She beamed as she refilled my cup. Final semester starts next month. The scholarship from the foundation covered everything. I still can't believe I don't have to work night shifts anymore. You earned it, I reminded her. And I expect an invitation to your graduation. This was the most unexpected joy of my new life, the ability to directly impact others who had walked the same difficult path I once traveled. Denise was just one of hundreds whose lives had been transformed through the Invisible Workers Fund, which had expanded beyond our city to establish chapters in 3 other major metropolitan areas. My phone chimed with a text from Olivia. Conference call with Tokyo ending early. Can pick up Emma from your place at 3 instead of 5. Unless you two have plans? Our relationship had continued to strengthen over the months. Weekly family dinners, regular outings with Emma, even occasional one-on-one conversations that delved into the complex emotions we both still processed. The wounds of the past hadn't vanished, but they had scarred over, leaving us stronger at the broken places. I replied, "We're making cookies for her class project. 3 is fine. Stay for dinner if you want." This casual exchange, this simple acknowledgement of my place in their lives, still filled me with quiet gratitude. Just as meaningful was what the message didn't contain. No apologies, no hesitation, no implied hierarchy of whose time or plans mattered more. My phone rang. Julian, calling with our weekly update on foundation business. "Catherine, the Senate committee has confirmed. They want you to testify next month on the Service Worker Protection Act. The legislation, which would establish national standards for treatment and compensation of service workers, represented the culmination of our advocacy efforts. My testimony would place me in the national spotlight, sharing my story as both cautionary tale and call to action. They've also requested Olivia as a witness," Julian continued. "Her perspective as a corporate executive who's changed her thinking on these issues is compelling. Has she agreed?" Olivia had become an unexpected ally in our work, using her marketing expertise to help other corporations understand the business case for treating all workers with dignity. Enthusiastically, she suggested you both prepare your testimony at the lake house next weekend, a working retreat with Emma along for fun. I smiled at the thought. The lake house, a modest but comfortable cabin I'd purchased as a family gathering, place had become our neutral territory, a space free from the complicated histories embedded in Olivia's mansion or my city apartment. Perfect. We'll do that. As I ended the call, I noticed the time, nearly 11. Emma would arrive soon for our baking session. At 12, my granddaughter had blossomed into a passionate advocate herself, starting a visibility club at her private school that connected students with service workers through regular appreciation, events, and learning exchanges. The doorbell rang, and I heard Maria, once a night cleaner at Luminous, now the Foundation's community outreach coordinator, greeting Emma in the foyer. "Grandma!" Emma burst onto the terrace, copper hair flying. "I brought the recipe Mrs. Torres gave me for Mexican wedding cookies. Can we make those today instead of chocolate chip?" "Of course." I embraced her, breathing in the scent of sunshine and childhood that still clung to her despite her growing sophistication. "Mrs. Torres from your school cafeteria?" Emma nodded proudly. "She's teaching our class about Mexican cultural traditions on Friday. I told her you'd help me make the cookies." Perfect. This was the legacy I most cherished. Watching my granddaughter grow into someone who naturally saw the humanity in every person she encountered, regardless of their job or status. Unlike her mother at that age, Emma would never need to learn these lessons through painful reckonings. "Mom says she's coming earlier today," Emma continued, already washing her hands at the kitchen sink. "Is that okay? She's been super stressed about the Tokyo project." "Of course it's okay. We should have plenty of cookies done by then. Maybe we'll even save her some dough to sample." Emma giggled. "She always says she shouldn't eat raw cookie dough, then eats it anyway when she thinks I'm not looking." As we gathered ingredients, I reflected on the changes a year had brought. The foundation's work expanded daily, touching more lives than I could have imagined. My relationship with Olivia, while still evolving, had found a new equilibrium based on mutual respect rather than obligation. Even Harrison had demonstrated unexpected growth, using his financial expertise to create investment opportunities for service workers seeking economic stability. Most significantly, I had discovered a version of myself that had been submerged, for decades beneath the weight of survival and sacrifice, a woman of confidence and vision, whose voice carried authority, whose opinions shaped policy, whose presence commanded respect. "What are you thinking about, Grandma?" Emma's question pulled me from my reverie. "You have that faraway look." "I'm thinking about visibility," I told her honestly. "About what it means to truly be seen." She nodded with surprising understanding. "Like how Mom sees you differently now? Or how people at Luminous see the cleaning staff?" "Exactly like that." I measured vanilla extract carefully into the mixer. "And how you've always seen me, even when others didn't." Emma beamed at the compliment. "That's because you're the most interesting person I know. Way more interesting than Mom's work friends, who all talk the same and dress the same." I laughed at her unvarnished assessment. "Well, I've had a more unusual path than most of them." "That's why you're going to Washington, right? To tell your story so other people like you won't be invisible anymore?" "That's right." I handed her a wooden spoon. "Though I'm just one voice. It will take many voices, including yours someday, if you choose, to create lasting change." As we continued baking, flour dusting our clothes and laughter filling the kitchen, I felt a deep contentment that transcended the material improvements in my circumstances. The true wealth of my life now wasn't measured in bank accounts or real estate, but in relationships restored, dignity reclaimed, and purpose discovered. Later, when Olivia arrived, looking both professionally polished and genuinely relaxed in a way she rarely had before, the three of us sat on the terrace enjoying warm cookies and cold milk. 3 generations of women, each shaped by different experiences of privilege and struggle, each learning from the others. "I have news," Olivia announced, brushing cookie crumbs from her blouse. "The board voted unanimously this morning. Starting next quarter, all Luminous Tech service workers will receive company stock options along with their regular compensation." I raised an eyebrow, impressed. That must have been a challenging proposal to push through. Actually, it wasn't. She smiled. Once we presented the data on productivity improvements and retention rates from our other worker-centered initiatives, the financial case was clear. Even Marcus supported it. Emma looked between us. "Does that mean the cleaning people will be like owners of the company?" "In a small but meaningful way, yes," Olivia confirmed. "They'll have a stake in the company's success, just like executives do." My daughter, who once couldn't see the humanity in service workers, was now championing their economic empowerment. The transformation seemed almost miraculous, yet I knew it had been earned through difficult conversations, painful realizations, and genuine commitment to change. As evening approached, the 3 of us moved inside, discussing plans for the lake, house weekend, and the upcoming congressional testimony. When Olivia and Emma eventually departed, with promises to call tomorrow, I returned to the terrace to watch the sunset paint the city skyline in gold and amber. On a desk inside lay the draft of my testimony for Congress, beginning with words I had carefully chosen. For 43 years, I was invisible. I cleaned offices while executives made decisions that affected thousands of lives. I emptied trash bins during meetings where corporate futures were determined. I maintained spaces without being seen by those who occupied them. Today, I stand before you not because my worth has changed, but because circumstances allowed my voice to finally be heard. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the city. In offices throughout those gleaming towers, cleaning crews would soon arrive for the night shift, emptying bins, wiping surfaces, vacuuming floors. Invisible workers maintaining the infrastructure of corporate America, just as I once had. But in a growing number of those buildings, starting with luminous tech and expanding through our foundation's advocacy, those workers now received living, wages, health benefits, educational opportunities, and even stock options. They were greeted by name, acknowledged as essential, treated with the dignity all humans deserve. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough until every worker in every building was truly seen. But it was a beginning, a light piercing through decades of systemic invisibility. As darkness fell and the city lights began to twinkle below, I raised my coffee cup in a silent toast to all those still working in shadows, still waiting to be seen. The journey from invisibility to recognition could be long and difficult, as I well knew. But I had learned something essential through my own unlikely transformation. Visibility, once achieved, could never be taken away, and in that knowledge lay both power and peace. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.